Sunlight cut through the ancient classroom, catching dust motes that swirled in the stagnant air. At the front, the teacher stood firm, his voice rising and falling with the rhythm of his lecture. He spoke of greatness, of the weight of scrolls, and the necessity of discipline. Every student sat with back straight, eyes locked on the lesson, hands moving in unison across the parchment. Except for Min, he let out a long, jagged yawn that forced his jaw to ache. He stared down at his brush, rolling it between his fingers until the wood felt slick. The teacher's words drifted into the background, becoming nothing more than a dull hum. Min shifted in his seat, the wooden bench creaking. His gaze was pulled toward the open window. Outside, the world moved in a chaotic, vibrant blur. The teacher's final word hung in the air, a signal that cut through the silence like a blade. Before the echoes could even fade, Min was already moving. He shoved his chair back, the wood scraping harshly against the stone floor, and bolted. Books were left sprawled on the desk, forgotten in the rush. He hit the doorway with his shoulder, stumbled, and then found his stride. He did not look back. He sprinted down the winding village path, his boots pounding against the packed earth. The air here was different, sharp, clean, and alive. He kicked a loose pebble, watching it skip into the tall grass, and reached out to tear a handful of wildflowers from the roadside, letting the petals scatter in his wake. His laughter erupted, loud and uncontained, bouncing off the nearby trees. He felt the weight of the scrolls vanish. "Studying is so boring," he shouted to the empty air, his voice cracking with pure, reckless joy. "Playing is much more fun." He leaped over a shallow ditch, his arms wide, embracing the open space. Every step was a defiance of the dusty room he had left behind, a celebration of the chaos that the teacher could never capture in a lecture. The sprint ended as quickly as it had begun. Min skidded to a halt, his chest heaving, his boots kicking up a cloud of fine, dry dust. He had intended to keep running until the village was a memory, but a sound caught him. It was a rhythmic grating noise, a sharp, metallic catch, catch that sliced through the quiet of the road. He tilted his head, listening. It was not the sound of a tool working wood or stone. It was something heavier, more persistent. He took a few cautious steps forward, his curiosity overriding the urge to keep moving. There, tucked away by the roadside, sat an elderly woman. Her hair was a shock of white against the muted colours of the path. She was hunched over a massive rough-hewn stone that looked as old as the earth itself. In her hands, she gripped a thick, crude iron bar. She pressed it against the stone and pulled over and over again with a steady, mechanical focus. The grating sound repeated, steady as a heartbeat. Min stood frozen. He watched the way her gnarled hands moved, the way her shoulders dipped with every stroke. The sheer oddity of the sight pulled Min in. Min took a final tentative step forward, his boots crunching on the dry earth. The rhythmic grinding sound stopped abruptly, leaving a void in the air that felt heavy. He looked at the woman, then down at the thick, rusted iron bar resting against the stone. It was heavy, blunt, and utterly unrefined. "Grandma," he began, his voice thin and laced with confusion. "What are you doing with such a big iron bar?" The woman did not rush. She looked up slowly, her eyes clear and steady. A gentle, patient smile touched her lips as she held his gaze. "I am grinding it," she replied, her voice soft but carrying across the small space to make a needle. Min blinked. He looked at the iron, then back at her, waiting for a laugh or a wink that never came. He thought of the tiny, delicate needles his mother used for sewing. Needles so thin they could vanish between his fingers. He looked back at the massive, crude bar. The sheer impossibility of the task hit him like a physical weight. He shook his head, his brow furrowing, as he tried to reconcile her words with the reality before him. The silence stretched between them, thick with his mounting skepticism. The absurdity finally broke through. Min let out a sharp, incredulous bark of laughter that echoed off the nearby trees. He clutched his stomach, his shoulders shaking, as he doubled over, unable to stop the sound from spilling out. "A needle?" he guffawed, wiping a tear from his eye. "From that massive rusted hunk of iron? That is impossible." He looked at her, expecting a smile, a joke, or even a flicker of embarrassment. Instead, he found only a calm, steady gaze. The woman did not argue. She did not raise her voice. She simply leaned back into her task. Her gnarled hands gripped the iron bar once more, pressing it firmly against the rough stone. "Catch! Catch!" The rhythmic grating sound resumed. Min's laughter faltered, then died away entirely. The silence that followed was heavy, punctuated only by the relentless scrape of metal on rock. The mockery that had felt so natural seconds ago now felt small and hollow. A sudden, jarring sense of awe washed over him. The rhythmic scraping finally ceased, leaving the air unnaturally still. The woman set the iron bar down, its weight thudding against the stone, with a finality that seemed to vibrate through the ground. She turned her head, her eyes meeting his with a depth that felt ancient and unyielding. She did not look at him with pity, but with a calm, steady patience that stripped away his defenses. "As long as one is persistent," she said, her voice low and resonant, grinding it every day, no matter how big the iron, it will eventually become a small needle. The words hung in the air, simple and devoid of ornament, yet they struck with the force of a physical blow. Min felt his breath hit. He looked from the massive stubborn bar to her calloused, steady hands, then back to the stone. The logic of her task was no longer absurd. It was an absolute, undeniable truth. His previous arrogance felt like a thin, brittle shell, now cracked wide open. He stood transfixed, the mocking laughter replaced by a heavy, quiet contemplation. He was no longer looking at a woman grinding iron. He was looking at the architecture of success. The image of his teacher's face, etched with disappointment, flashed before his eyes. He saw his own desk, buried under untidy, forgotten scrolls. The contrast was sharp. "If I were diligent," he whispered, the words barely audible against the breeze, "I could be different." A sudden, sharp resolve tightened his chest. He turned without another word and bolted. His feet hammered against the packed earth of the village path. He did not look for wildflowers. He did not kick at pebbles. He ran with a singular driving purpose, his breath coming in ragged, rhythmic gasps. The village blurred past him as he pushed his legs harder, his heart pounding a frantic, steady beat against his ribs. He reached the schoolhouse, lungs burning, and skidded to a halt at the heavy wooden door. He pushed it open and strode inside. His presence commanding the quiet room, he did not hesitate. He moved straight to his desk, pulled his books from the pile, and flattened them open with a firm, decisive motion. He picked up his brush, dipped it in ink, and stared at the page. The teacher paused his lecture, his gaze shifting to the boy. A slow, knowing smile touched the teacher's lips. The classroom walls remained the same, but the boy within them changed. Day after day, Min sat with his back straight, his eyes locked onto the scrolls. The ink-stained fingers of his youth grew steady. His early clumsy attempts at calligraphy, once jagged and uneven, smoothed into flowing, precise lines. He spent hours poring over ancient texts, his mind absorbing the complex characters like a sponge. The village watched as the restless boy disappeared, replaced by a youth who found his rhythm in the quiet scrape of a brush against paper. Seasons turned, the sun rose and set through the windows, marking the passage of years. Min's reading evolved from hesitant, stumbling syllables into clear, confident recitation. He became a fixture of the school, his presence a testament to the lesson he had learned. His teacher often paused his own work, watching the young man with a look of quiet, profound satisfaction. The transition was complete. Min had shed his impatience, trading it for the slow, deliberate grind of study. He grew into a scholar of note, his name whispered with admiration throughout the village. The teacher walked to his desk one afternoon, placed a hand on the stack of perfectly written scrolls, and nodded. The boy who had once bolted was gone. Years later, the village path felt narrower under his stride. Min walked the familiar route, his pace measured and steady. He stopped where the road curved near the old oak. The stone was still there, embedded in the earth, its surface worn smooth by decades of rain and wind. The elderly woman was gone, the iron bar was gone, only the stone remained, a silent witness to a lesson that had defined his entire life. He reached out, his hand brushing the cool, weathered surface. The rhythmic sound of grinding seemed to echo in the stillness of the afternoon. He stood for a long time, watching the sunlight play across the cracks in the rock. He thought of the iron bar, the crude metal, and the impossible task that had once made him laugh. He realized then that the needle was never just a tool. It was a testament to the refusal to quit. He pulled a small gleaming object from his pocket, a needle polished to a mirror finish. He held it up, catching the light. It was small, sharp, and perfect. It caught the sun, casting a tiny, brilliant spark against the shadows of the trees. He looked at the stone one last time, then back at the needle in his palm. The wisdom of that day had become the foundation of everything he had built. He whispered the words to the empty air, his voice firm and clear. Where there is effort in grinding iron, there will be a day it becomes a needle. He turned and walked back toward the village, the needle held tight in his hand, a reminder that with persistence, even the hardest stone yields to the steady, patient work of a lifetime.